So thank you for joining. I'm Gabriel, and actually this webinar, which should be a webinar actually, with questions at the end. So we are looking at half hour, more or less, of going through slides and basically sucking up all the knowledge from Henning
and you.
And maybe a bit from me, and after that it will be more about a Q&A session for another half hour, just to actually try and answer or put on the right track for answering a couple of the questions that we have exchanged a lot on our alumni CSIL group in Cambridge, where let me tell you that also Henning is an alumni there.
Yeah. Long time ago.
When did you graduate, actually?
10, 12 years ago. Yeah, I was still in Ukraine when that was, so 10 or 11 years ago, just when I started in Ukraine, so 2011, 2012.
Yeah. So this gets us a bit in the middle of it. So Henning is we met in BDO, the consultancy firm, and we've talked a lot, collaborated on developing the ESG and helping, actually supporting the teams, the advisory and the BDO teams into developing ESG. That got me that got me into trying to be a bit more specific and more in the know, actually in the know, when talking about materiality and talking about ESG and sustainability altogether. And Henning was, for me, at the right time, at the right place and at the right time. From his position of latest one as the global sustainability director within BDO, well, let's just say he is at the center of it all. Yeah,
that's a big statement. Right.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Henning, for being here and just to walk us through the baseline of materiality. Guys, please do go ahead and type in your questions, and let's try and make it as fruitful as we can do it. And also for our colleagues that cannot really be with us in this webinar, they kindly asked us to record it. So with your permission, I would hit record once the attendance will be
beyond 20, which it is now.
Yeah. So 21. So we should be something like 40 something in this so recording has already started. So guys, without further ado, for Henning, go ahead and do.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add, first of all, welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We really, really appreciate it. My name is Henning Draeger. I have the great pleasure to talk you through some of the ideas, some of the experiences that I have made with this topic called materiality. I'll give a little bit of a context on materiality to start with, and then I really want to keep it all practical, because depending on where we are in the world, South America, North America, Southeast Asia, Europe, there are different interpretations, yet there are a number of legislative pieces in particular coming out of the European Union reporting regulations and the Securities and Exchange Commission in North America, which really means we need to understand and come to a common ground on what materiality is. I wanted to also add that it's not just a Q&A. We're here to learn as much from you as you hopefully can learn from us, because it might be that I've done this for 25 years, but I don't know everything. I'm still baffled by new things, and I'm really, really wanted to hear your point of view of how you approach materiality, because I can only speak from, obviously, first-person point of view, although it has been 25 years. So without further ado, let's get started.
Henning, you should take it over from here.
Yes.
Well, I'll be your sidekick and
oh, that's right. Let me click where. How does it? Just So again, welcome to Materiality. And I always like to start with some symbolism, maybe some popular culture. So how do we think about materiality for starters? Well, you might know, you don't want to look at me, you might want to look at Gabby, but it's much more interesting to look at this young lady, and that's the young Madonna. Madonna sang a song called Living in the Material World, where she was most certainly in the center of things. And my analogy around materiality is, if you want to do it well, you really, at the beginning of any process, no matter how advanced you are, need to make sure that you target the right context and the right issues. Just like our materiality girl, haha, trying to be a bit funny now. And thus, it really starts there
And
with the
starts
material issues. What?
and
What is it?
this is exactly the material guys
Yeah,
today.
and obviously the
Totally.
stakeholders around Madonna want to know, please tell us a little bit about what your needs are. Is it supply chain? Is it net zero commitments? Whatever it is. But unless you are totally centered around materiality, in my experience, you really have an haphazard approach to sustainability reporting, assurance, integration into the strategy. So let's start then with two baselines. One, what is a materiality assessment, and what are material topics? And I'll quickly, for 10 seconds, let you read that, because it's very boring to repeat everything that I say.
So how would you put it, Henning, in 2 words? What is materiality in 2 words?
The business.
The business
The
today.
business. Yeah, the business.
Today.
To me, it's the biz or the business.
The fundamental side of it. I mean, should be actually the how's it called?
It's a benchmark. It's a benchmark.
The benchmark, but also the foundation of it. You know what are your needs, your implications, your everything, and you are building your strategy, your raison d'être today. Just a refresh, maybe based on this, let's say, new framework. It was with us since forever, but then again, now it becomes very high on the public agenda, and we can follow. We have all the best context ever to really go and do something about it.
So the way to think about it is just like when you do a gap analysis or when you do a baseline analysis. So where do you want to go and who's your audience? That's why the stakeholder angle is critical. We see a lot of materiality analysis made based on the views of management only, and maybe with a limited amount of internal feedback on, are these the areas, are these the issues we should focus on before we dive deeper into the data. But what I have seen where it's really successful is really to deeply involve the stakeholders, which will read your reports, which you will negotiate with, which you need their goodwill, your buy-in, the reputation from, and really make sure that these two are aligned. So like I said, it might be a bit messy because it's human rights, it's supply chain, it's net zero. Think of it as getting to those the produce in your wild garden that really will give you the energy and sustain your life as a sustainability practitioner and as a company, because that's the way to then look for the produce instead of focusing on everything is green, everything is complicated, everything looks like weeds that needs to be pulled out. No, so certain things need to be left in. And hopefully over the next half an hour, we can help you a little bit identify the weeds from the produce. So that's the assessment. And the topics, nothing new, colleagues and friends. We most certainly have seen this in the media, social media, everywhere. The King Charles, who was just crowned this weekend, big environmentalist, wrote loads of books. He really spanned, and just as an example, he spanned across E, S, and G, whether it's greenhouse gas emissions, the climate risk, water management, to set net zero emissions targets 2030, 2050. Social area, everything around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and governance, again, depending on where you are, transparency, fit for transparency reporting, executive remuneration, women in management, and so forth. So once you've done the assessment, you then, in my humble opinion, focus on the big E, S, and G and look for the topics which you can build key performance indicators and key risk indicators out of. And these are different for different people, just because different organizations. Just because we all talk about net zero, it might be that your company has literally zero emissions or very few emissions, and thus you might want to focus on the social and the governance side, and you would then run the environmental side by side. But really, you can't report on all. So getting to the produce instead of the weeds will help you then look for data. Make sure that it's the right quality, that it's reliable, that people know what they should report. And then you've done the assessment, getting to the topics that are important for you. Ideally link it, as we will see, to your financial performance to make it truly integrated. And then you have a good starting point. And I think, and we are a little bit biased, me and Gabby, because we work for BDO, which is not just advisory, but it's also an audit, an accounting, tax, and wider advisory services. And one of the things I've always found fascinating over the last 12 years is to work with my colleagues in financial audit who have a clear definition of what is material when they look through financial statements.
Well, actually, when doing audit, everything is crystal clear in order to actually do it.
Yes,
so it's a good way to look through this lens, because it offers lots of clarity.
Yes.
But then again, we should really make it our own.
100%. I am not saying, oh, now we have to follow what the international accounting standards are saying. I'm just saying, what have I learned when working alongside those who have a very structured approach to what is material? What are they looking for when we look through environmental reports, sustainability reports, ESG reports, they look through financial statements. And I have picked out the 5 things that I feel are quite material, which we can make our own in the ESG space. And that's relevance, accuracy, timeliness, significance, and what is the material threshold.
Let's just get through all these 5 just a bit, because it's really important, and maybe it's not at hand for everybody to really grasp this kind of perspective. So relevance, actually, it's about what's really, I mean, this is clearly as much as possible linked to something financial or pretty much tangible, let's say. Tell me if I'm wrong with it.
It tries to be financial.
Yeah. Yes. So it should link to actual involved or interested parties there, and was the following the money, let's say, with it.
Which is why the stakeholders in financial is regulators, investors, banks, and those who digest financial information. That's no different than us providing ESG information. We need to make the information we're providing, not because we love it or we want to put a spin on it from our side, but what's relevant, really relevant to the audience.
What they're interested in order to build on their agenda and mold actually ESG or sustainability altogether to something that they're already in market for. Yes. In the end, we are relevant and we are there to actually support if they really get us. And they say, this is interesting for me. It helps me somehow. So if possible,
And you can understand, if you look at a financial sheet, a profit and loss sheet, a balance sheet, and you provide inaccurate information and people invest in your company and it proves not to be true, you are liable. And I think this same seriousness, we should, if we want to elevate ESG information to the same level as financial information, relevance to those who use the information, and not PR, not greenwash, red wash, blue wash, whatever we call it, but really speak to what they need. If it's still voluntary, the EU will tell us what we need if we are in the European Union, and then engage with them. So that's the relevant part. Just because you like something might not be relevant to the people that actually read it. Exactly. So we then go to accuracy. That's quite self-explanatory. What standards have you used when you did carbon accountings? What standards have you used when you tracked your human rights in your supply chain? Make sure that you have, if you have obviously the resources, you have assured everything. And obviously there's an assurance requirement for companies in the European Union that do the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, a limited assurance, but still, and it will be reasonable. So just making sure if we identified relevant, make sure that we have the same accuracy of the data, the forecast, the activities that we're displaying than any financial statements. So that's quite timeliness. Obviously, if we want to integrate financial and non-financial, it should be in the annual report. If you don't have an annual report because you're too small, then and you want to elevate the interest of your stakeholders, make sure that you publish it at the same time every year, maybe with the end of your financial year, or you have a separate sustainability or ESG report where you then do, but so that the users are equipped to know that you might comment on it during the year, but on the 1st of April every year, they can expect your ESG performance to land on their desk.
So prove consistency into your approach by doing it thoroughly, but also actually consistently.
Yes.
I mean, this says it all, yeah.
And significance, we could now go into detail, relevance, accuracy, significance. If I am an oil company and I don't report on net zero targets or how I'm going to transition out of a ceiling of use of fossil fuel of global societies, which goes only one way, and that's down, then I have omitted a significant part. So always making sure, based on your materiality assessment and the topics that you have chosen, that you really put the significant. You can rank them, for instance, red, very, very important. We will report at all stages. It will be terrible for our business if we didn't report. And green, we're following it on the side, but we are not putting lots of resources behind tracking the risks and opportunity in that space. But that's again the significant. And then the last one again, so how do we then know if we do the material assessment and we've identified our material topics, and we'll get to that in a minute, how do we set our threshold? So there's actually not a formula, but a set of steps that a financial auditor takes in order to see whether the information that she or he or she have been set is actually materially right or materially wrong. And that is the same approach that I think, based on our analysis of the information, the quality of the information, the processes, the vetting, maybe even getting third parties in order to check it, to make sure that if all these steps are taken, we are okay. We've checked it all. We haven't passed the threshold of where it's not acceptable to publish this. So again, just a nice way of keeping that in mind, what good performance looks like and what not so good performance looks like. And again, if we take those 5 into consideration, what are the key takeaways? Again, you will get these slides, so don't read them in detail. Stakeholder engagement, absolutely key, inside and out, if you want to do it properly, because you might be reliant on bank loans. You might be reliant on NGOs giving you great feedback, on your customers giving you a great net promoter score. Don't just assume that you only have 1 or 2 stakeholders. There are direct stakeholders which you interact with on a regular basis, and there are indirect ones, those on the sidelines who might be looking at your business, who might become material if you alienate them, right? And so, a Twitter SH1T storm.
The community
to mind, right?
Actually, the community for me, it's this kind of indirect stakeholder it seems dormant, but once you really go rogue, those guys, I mean, the community, which is, you should say they're manageable.
Yes.
They're storming in, let's say.
Yes. Absolutely. So again, nothing, colleagues and friends, that you don't already know. Stakeholder engagement is absolutely key in order for the reporting that you put together to be read. Focus on impacting. We've heard a lot in the financial world around impact assessment. So if I put X money in photovoltaics, or I put it in wind farms, what will not only the output in terms of megawatt be, but what about all the other output? Oh, it makes the landscape look ugly, or there might be lots of new jobs created. Again, when reporting, look at, if we take a decision to go net zero, if we take a decision to positively discriminate women to be in management position, then we expect this impact. And the way we're going to track this impact is X, Y, Z. That's, for me, something that's really important and up and coming.
Yeah, and actually you can have all the good intentions, just like with let's take the photovoltaics, for instance. But then again, all your good intentions and maybe hurrying up and speeding up things because you want to be net zero before 2030, for instance, might drag with it some negative aspects that you should really take into consideration, and the means that are not more or less important than the goal, of course.
Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed.
So yeah. So because we can fall on this slope, saying that this is for a good cause. Okay, we suffer a bit, yes,
Indeed.
but someone suffers there
Indeed.
somehow. So we should really account for this. Some stakeholders should be involved. Let's see how we can manage it and fulfill our mission.
Indeed. So the third point is hilarious, really, but it's true. The financial reporting takes a long-term perspective. If you look at an account, we review what's happened over the last year, and we are quite hesitant to actually look towards the future because there are certain liability issues when we want to sign off things. But underlying is we want a business to be successful, not just next quarter, next year, but in the long term. And of course, bonuses by executives are often set quarterly. They often track only financial KPIs or KRIs. Very few companies are actually having incentive schemes in place which encourage water consumption of my division, CO2 emissions from my factory. But that surely is the way to, one, elevate the significance of executives and managers who are being rewarded to take this seriously. So again, let's keep pushing out. Sustainability is not a short-term thing, it's a medium to long-term thing. And investments obviously need to happen, but we also live in a, as Madonna would say, material world. I want everything now. I have quarterly reporting that often, if you're listed, it often takes away the focus from investments needed to 2030, which is, by the way, only 7 years away. Oh, 2050 net zero, even further away, right?
Yeah.
But the long-term perspective of choosing the right material topics you can then evaluate year on year. Interconnectivity, that's the holy grail. Integrated reporting. We no longer have financial and non-financial, ESG and financial information. We have corporate reporting and corporate issues. And for that to really happen, we need to find the interconnectivity. What is the financial penalty of me not meeting certain environmental, social, and governance criteria, not only by law, but by, for instance, the loss of net promoter scores, by the loss of contracts.
Or investments, yeah.
So the interconnectivity, that ESG immediately touches all your financial areas and vice versa. And that is a mess, and that is difficult, and we are not there yet. But I think that is the way we need to go. And last but not least, so again, the discussion, should everything around ESG be data, something that you can put in spreadsheets? Well, yeah, but certain values or purpose, if you would like, cannot be put there. That needs to be articulated differently, maybe through a mission or a typical mission or vision statement that then trickles down to action plans so that they can be accountable, so that the company knows when that's actually happened. For instance, we want to be an environmental leader in XYZ. Well, then make it as explicit as you can. And if you don't have data available, like numerical data, tell the story. Get some evidence from your stakeholders and those you interact with to see whether you're on track. But data-driven, absolutely. But some of it is narrative, some of it is numeric.
Henning, the way I see this slide actually is that the first 2 points, stakeholder and focus on impact. I would dare to say that this would pretty much be feasible to incorporate. The next two of them, long term and interconnectivity, they're a bit for the now and the future of what we are doing. It's not that the importance is less than the other two, but these other two seem more at hand for the others to embrace.
Indeed.
The long term and interconnectivity, they go along with a bit of maybe seismic at some point impact within an organization, namely a large one.
Yes.
So this kind of And there's a point for this.
We should have that in the discussion as well.
Yeah,
around
yeah.
Big, medium,
And-
public, and other sector.
Yeah, and the
organizations.
data actually for me it's
Yeah.
really, really interesting in the fact that maybe the first set of materiality assessments a company would do nowadays,
Yes.
yeah, would be about setting this kind of framework.
Yes.
So you would
100%.
be really maybe brilliant in the first two. You would try and touch and go as deep as possible for the other two and set an actual set of benchmarks, structuring for the data part. What do you
Don't
think?
spoil it. We will get to that in a few slides, right?
Okay.
Absolutely. But fantastic, Gabby.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
So the next one, and please visit the GRI website for this. This has got nothing to do with us. We didn't make it up. Just as an example of practical approaches to, okay, I understand the topic. I understand I have to do an assessment. Maybe I can learn something from financial reporting of what I should look out for when looking for this information, getting to it. GRI has actually done something really, really helpful on 4 steps, and I'll quickly run through it. Understand the context you're in, including your stakeholders. Identify actual and potential impacts. We will come to the topic of double materiality in a minute. So not only what the company does to the environment, the social environment, the natural environment, and the governance environment, but what those contexts are doing to the company and how it can operate. Assess the significance of the impacts. As always, we need to prioritize. We have limited amount of resources available. How do we track these impacts? You could do a traffic light system. Red, absolutely catastrophic. We need to do something. Yellow, it's important. It's material. We need to focus on it. And these are the steps. And green, track it once a quarter and make sure that it's reviewed maybe at the annual.
Very risk management.
Yeah, I mean, just and then once you've done that, you then go to step number 4. And again, I recommend you visiting the GRI sites. There are some, you register and you get lots of materials for free. You really then make sure that you drill down to the topics that you want to report on. Because remember, if you look at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, we've got 17. We are seeing reporters reporting on all 17. Honestly, it's great that they want to do that. Are they really material to the business? I always ask. You don't want to overburden yourself. You really want to make sure that you hit the home run with your material topics and then go deep. Because everybody can go wider and say a little bit about lots of things, when what in particular investors and consumers really want to know: what are you doing on animal rights? What are you doing on carbon? What are you doing on supply chain into China? What are you doing on plastic pollution in Southeast Asia? Whatever it might be. And if you contribute to that and you can be a part of the solution, then that looks like it could be a material topic. Whereas maybe killing hunger in Africa, which is totally, absolutely 100% important, could maybe be a smaller issue, which you could do through fundraising, for instance. So you would still get the feel-good factor, but it's not material to your business and what you do. So have a look at that. The GRI source. Type in Materiality Assessment. Very important for those of you who are in Europe, and including our friends in the United Kingdom, because a lot of companies still trade in the European Union and meet the threshold for the inclusion of what we call double materiality. So if you look at this, the 2 bubbles: financial materiality, obviously financial statements, sign them off, audit them. Impact materiality is the key material issues that we've just discussed across the E, S, and G spectrum. Now, double materiality says you have to explain to me, the reader, or the EU legislator, the EU regulator, what your financial impacts will be if you do not follow the material impacts that you've identified in the ESG spectrum and vice versa. You need to report both. And that means you need to be aware of what your company's financial and ESG impact is on your market and the wider world. If you want to know, if you want to put it that way, on terms of emissions know no boundaries, no borders. So obviously that's a global problem. And then you need to understand, obviously, the legislative context you're in. If you're in Europe, the Green Deal the CSRD, the taxonomy, the sustainable supply chain laws which are coming in now, they will be driving much of the disclosures if you're in that bucket. So actually, you need to make sure that, one, you follow all these disclosures, but two, look at your resource situation inside the company to meet all these. So there's an outside-in effect as well. And those two need to be reported if you are captured within the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, the taxonomy, and the CSRD. And this was also the original GRI premise back in the 90s. The company can't just do, this is how much waste we created. No, but what's the climate impact of your cork trees in southern Spain, which you rely on to produce X product, suddenly gets hit by lots of heat waves, or wine manufacturers don't want to produce more cork caps. They want to do plastics, so they don't plant as many. Suddenly your supply chain is impacted. That's an outside-in impact. So lots of information. There's lots to think about. Don't worry, it's all good. We are all in that boat, but just be aware, double materiality is something in Europe, it's going to happen. Globally, with the International Sustainability Standards Board, and in America with the Securities and Exchange Commission, they take a single materiality approach where they just look at but we think there will be, we hope there will be, they will emerge together and there will be consensus around doing double materiality. But just be aware, this adds an extra layer of reporting, an extra layer of thinking about sustainability. Yeah, and then because we said we were going to make, and I'm just checking a time, half an hour, we've just left you with a 5-step approach if you haven't done this yet, and I'd love to hear your view on it in our discussion around if you want to start thinking about materiality and you're at the relatively beginning. What do you see in the market? Well, over the last 25 years, I can tell you this is the one that I've seen the most. Your steering committee, you commit that you want to do it. Somebody from the management team or your board sits down, she or he or Z might not be the right, might not be the ESG experts, but you make sure that you create a nice diverse team with a nice remit to look at materiality assessment and identifying the materiality topics. Then you go to stakeholder identification, both internally, few surveys, going to your suppliers, going to the NGOs which might have been critical in the past, go even to the regulator, those who will read what you want to produce, whether it's online or in physical PDF, and talk to them about it. And always have the financial and ESG impact in mind when you talk to them. Some of them might be impacted financially by you making this investment. Some of them might be positively, negatively impacted by you, diverting other resources away. So consider that. And what we always say is make a power ranking, identify your key stakeholders, and then the rest, including the indirect one, because you cannot serve them all. I've yet to see a fully received report, which everybody loved. That's because we are 8 billion? We are 8 billion people on this planet, and we've got many, many stakeholders. So make sure in your power ranking that you set up those for who this reporting is, including yourself and your the staff, the report creators, and your employees, of course, if that's how you want to use it, and make sure you rank them accordingly.
Henning, from this steering committee, what would be that role that most probably will be most interested into being your best friend when you as a designer for such an assessment?
So I would say two things. First of all, there should be executive buy-in. People will not, they have busy jobs. They might volunteer for this. So it might actually be that you want to have somebody from the management team, or if you have a board member that really empowers you. This person needs to find somebody who is, as I said here, highly motivated, who maybe is not an expert, but really wants to become an expert or wants to lead this process, because the executive will not have much time. There needs to be a project director or manager who really manages the rest of the engagement. Where he or Z sits marketing, distribution. You might have a sustainability department, so obviously it could be in there. It really depends on, can you find the right person to
I
do
would
this?
bet on risk.
Risk also good. Again, I would not discriminate. It's like I said.
Yeah, but this actually the more established firms, they actually have a risk manager, and that guy is really there to make sure they're
Yes.
they're covered.
Or girl.
Yeah.
Right. Because
So my first thought would be to see if I can have some sort of chemistry or an
100%.
agenda.
Yes,
Let's say
indeed, indeed.
common agenda with someone in risk. If not, someone that's really alpha in the
Yes,
board.
indeed,
Yeah.
indeed.
Okay.
So identify, then you go to your, and that's why we put it below your material issue assessment, everything we just talked about, your ESG segmentation. You can do a, what is it, PEST, political, economic, social, and technology, and you can do a strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat analysis on top of your material issue assessment. And if you wanted freely available frameworks, I point you to GRI and the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. Go to their webs and look at their materiality maps. Because if you don't want to create one from scratch, you might not have the time or the expertise, go there. That's the critical one, because now you put your steering committee's energy and your stakeholder identification to work before you then go to your stakeholders through surveys, interviews, focus groups, one-to-one. If you've identified somebody being extremely powerful in your ranking, try to get one-to-one telephone, ideally face-to-face meetings with them. What do you want to read? What do you want from me? Where do you think this is our idea? And really take that into account, both external and internal. It could only be internal, so only for your staff, only for your production staff in Brazil, in South Korea, in South Africa, wherever it might be, absolutely. But all the good work that you've done, you should also score some marketing. And of course, if there's regulation in place, you need to go external. But maybe you want to consider, if you're not captured by this, to first do it internally and test it with that stakeholder group and the potential talent you want to attract into the organization. Just some ideas. Before you then, and we will see an example in a minute, go to your full analysis of the feedback that you've had. No, one back, sorry.
Okay.
The feedback you've had, you obviously, if you are serious about it, you want to try and integrate it not into your corporate strategy, not have it separately on some, nest somewhere in the organization. So when the good times are good economically, we're going to do it. And if they're bad economically, we're just discarding it. We don't live in this kind of world anymore. Sustainability needs to be integrated in corporate strategy, with reporting being the absolute end point of that. So creating a materiality matrix, we'll see that in a minute, integrated, how to create incentivization of your future talent, as well as your CEOs. And then, of course, the reporting. And if you're captured by EU, how to report in a way that meets the requirements and can be audited, like the EU CSRD. And now let me give you some quick examples. And these are just random examples. BDO has worked with some of these organizations, but we find them just great examples that we can recommend you to look at. How, for instance, a professional service firm like Accenture, very easily over 2 pages in their annual report, addressing how they've accessed their priority issues or material issues. And then, as you mentioned earlier, Gabby, how they're linked on the right-hand side to the key sustainable development goals and how they're met. So you have like your priority issues. And I like this because I'm a visual guy, and I would basically draw up an activity plan and an accountability plan underneath each on E, S, and G. So there's full accountability in terms of resource you have available, but you cover all aspects in not too many spreadsheets. So I really, really like what they've done here. So the next example is a hotel chain called Whitbread out of the UK. What I like here in their annual report, and these guys are not just doing sustainability report, they integrate everything in the sustainability report in their annual reports. They're listed, Accenture is listed, Whitbread is listed in London. how they talk about how they understand sustainability, the responsibility, community, and opportunity, and what the teams are and activities are that are tied to them thinking around this force for good team. Very interesting, because we always talk about who's responsible. Well, sustainability should be managed by everybody in order to be successful, not just the chief sustainability officer. Very nice little graphic that shows us what kind of dynamics are at play and who they actually involved. And here, super classic materiality matrix. Left to right, the importance for the business on the x-axis and the importance for the key stakeholders, which you hopefully have identified and ranked. And everything that is in the top right-hand corner, important to the management and organization and importance to the key stakeholders. Those issues are what I would expect to be in any disclosure. You can take from the other buckets for sure, but those are the ones. And if, for instance, if it's CSRD, you're in the European Union, you must have that in there. That's whether the stakeholder likes it or not, it's given by law. So obviously that should be in that bucket, but top right-hand corner. And then you track each issue because they move from year to year through your stakeholder engagement. And then that's just a nice visual representation. And it's really old. So so very well established. So you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah.
And last but not least, because
but this force for good, I mean, it really puts in the perspective. So you have the new or the innovative, if you like, in this established side, and together really makes lots of sense.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Really nice example, this one.
And the last one is it's a Dutch gym chain. I think it's the biggest gym chain in Europe. Again, they're listed. Very nice. They give me on one slide, very simple, here are my stakeholders, and they tell us what kind of relationship they have. So how they interact with them, why they are important, and what kind of interactions they're having. Very nice. Definitely required if you are within the European Union regulations. And on the right-hand side, very nice. The European regulations will talk a lot about how your business model responds to value creation, financial and non-financial value creation, and having graphics like this, and then lots of information in the appendices that tells me what your inputs are, what your business model, how you're making your money, the outputs that you deliver on the financial and the non-financial side, and then what the impacts. You can then link them to either we met the legislation in Europe, or we met the legislation in Malaysia or in Singapore, and the wider topical areas around sustainable development goals. There, a little bit of thinking is required, but really nice because it directs the reporting flow and what the reader can expect going forward. So I really like that. But enough about us. Over to you. I hope this was a little bit useful, and sorry that we are over time a little bit, but over to you. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Henning. I mean, it's always nice because you learn things from each discussion that you have with someone that really did it for such a long time.
To the end.
And still going strong. And maybe now it's time just to hit us with your questions. And for us to...
I love the comment, you could teach anything. Hold on, let me get my cookery book out. Jamie Oliver, I could improve this. No.
Yeah, so guys, we can do this 2 ways. The important side is not to overlap ourselves. The safest way is just to go in writing with the questions. If not, just raise your hands and...
You want us to do a whole series? Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you very much. If you're willing to pay for it, we're all yours. No, we're of course in a sharing mood, right? And sustainability is all about learning circles, or whatever you want to call it, groups. We don't also know everything. Like we said, again, we want to learn from you. If you feel this was worth your time, we can consider whether we're going to do it again, because we love the Cambridge Leadership Program, but we love sustainability in general. We get paid to do what we love, so lucky us. Right?
Yeah, we let's make this to the end of it, and make sure that we are here to, and not only us, but us as a community. Let's let's share the knowledge.
Should we go through them then?
Yeah.
From the
So,
top.
can you go back to the process slide and talk about take us through timings?
Sure, sure. The
process slide.
five step,
Okay.
5 step. Sure. Thank you,
This,
KP. Is that Kevin Peterson, the very, very famous English cricketer? If you are,
this one.
you just scored a 6. So yes.
Wait. It's not live.
So again, it's based again on my experience. But if I were to do that, if I started my own business, or if I were to advise a small, medium-sized enterprise, I would say the first thing is, do you feel at executive level that this is important enough to establish a group that looks at this? Surely that's an email or a quick conversation, because if they say no, or they can't answer the why, then a longer conversation might be had. How long does it take to set up a steering committee? You need some terms of references. You need the right people. Are you volunteering them? Are you asking their line managers to put that committee together? If you want to start from scratch, no more than 2 to 3 weeks, even shorter, I would say. Stakeholder identification is the job of the steering committee. So this could be 1 or 2 workshops of, I don't know, 2 to 4 hours to really have a complete brain dump. Who are the stakeholders we want to talk to? What is their impact on us? So yeah, maybe materiality issue assessment. This piece is more substantial, I would think. If you start from 0, you have to get into the whole PEST, SWOT, GRI, SASB. Then this can easily take 2 months. Easily, even 3, depending on how big your company is. The stakeholder communication can be done in parallel to the material issue assessment. So if you've identified in your second step already what the material people are that you want to talk to, send them some surveys, invite them in for interviews. Maybe they have done materiality analysis. Why they might want to share that with you if they're a supplier, for instance. Why not ask them? So don't wait with this communication until you're fully finished with the material issue assessment. I would do it in parallel. How long will you set yourself? Well, what's a survey in your business? 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
It depends on the audience and how widespread it is, but I would say that tops 2 weeks should suffice.
Think about 10, 12 questions. Again, you can Google that. Very happy to maybe offer some advice on what we are doing as well. Focus groups need a little bit more thinking about what you want to achieve, but do that. The analysis, sorry, let me just finish.
Go ahead.
The analysis, so if the reporting is the end game, as in I have a physical report, a PDF, I have a website, even if it's only internal, that's at the very end. The analysis of everything you've heard, you looked at your data streams, you think about how to integrate it into your corporate strategy. You can imagine lots of people might not be happy with this. Unless there was consensus at the very beginning. The steering committee needs full backup in order to suggest these things. Depending on how political your minefield is, this can take months, a year, even longer.
Yeah.
Before you then have everything in place, put the report, maybe a GRI report together.
Yes, I would say that the first reporting will hurt a bit. First reporting for any company, of course. I mean, takes such many involved people from their comfort zone, actually. I would say on this survey, interview, focus groups, because there are actually several research techniques. I would say that I would go with qualitative ones, hence focus groups or one-to-one discussions, only with the top and the really important milestone-like person.
100%. Yeah.
100%. For the other, I would go with surveys, and more than that, I would go with little surveys on certain aspects rather than a big long survey at once. This is my take on it.
100%.
Yeah.
If you're doing it super fast, I've seen all 5 being run through in 3 months. But that is, if you start from scratch, that is pushing it. That's steering committee better be fully resourced, informing everybody, I'm coming to you to get this information. If not, by identifying even internal stakeholders. Who are you? What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Well, I was informed. I don't know. So yeah.
Yeah, just I mean, this is really resembles a lot to going through a rebranding or a branding exercise. It takes time for people to make it their to really adapt to the new system. If you really push it, most likely you will make very rather enemies than friends with your endeavors, and actually put many more challenges for you to tackle later on. Take into consideration that when saying an assessment analysis, just like Henning, you were saying, you should be consistent year on year. So basically, you will be starting at this point, and you will be paving the way for the years to come with this. So take a bit of your time. I know everybody would be in a hurry. I know everybody would say, just give me that fucking report now. Yeah, at some point. Yeah. But it's up to you to do a sustainable business out of sustainability, if you like. Oh. And taking this into consideration and making it a bit easier to chew for everybody, it's just a better way to go about it.
Could we go through them first and then open it up if people want? So software, do you know what? There are more software provider than there are sand on a beach in Spain, because it's really being hotting up. So I'd rather not make recommendations, but what I can throw out there, for instance, is Workiva, the American ESG risk and materiality rating assessment company. You can look at S&P, so Standard and Poor's. You can look at SAP, the German SAP. Look at Oracle. IBM has solutions, but there are millions of data and materiality assessments providers who have different types of softwares, whether it's intuitive, lots of colors, or more Excel based. Yeah, you could do it in Excel. I hate Excel, so I like to use software, and I don't want to bias you by pitching you mine. So I would just say Google it, and you will find 10 applications. And if you want my top tips, very happy to. If you want to email me.
We'll share also contacts.
Yeah, so
let's do a 2 minutes.
You know it, yeah.
Henning, let's do a 2 minutes answer. Let's try this one, yeah? Sure. So no more than 2 minutes for each question. Let's see how this goes. So how do you best demonstrate your materiality process in terms of assurance? So
there's a standard called the ISAE 3000, which outlines this. We as auditors, non-financial auditors, are using the ISAE 3000. So in order to understand the process, you need to know the standard. So it's free of charge on the IFAC, the International Financial Accounting. International Financial Accounting Committee. Thank you. You can download it free of charge. There you know what assurance criteria the auditor will put on you, including the materiality process.
So the rest are thank you notes for us.
Oh, really?
Which,
that's very kind.
Thank you back.
You're not falling asleep.
But question, I would close up with a question from me to you. Henning, we've seen everything. We've talked about the complexity of it all. Tell us, how does an actual team to do this properly looks like? How many people, or maybe what would be the roles within the team, from your experience?
But that team is obviously, as we said, for the steering committee, multi-functional, because where do I get my social data? Probably HR. Where do I get my environmental data? Operations, probably, unless you have an environmental or sustainability team. Where do I get my governance data? From risk. That's already colleagues in those areas sitting with buckets of information that I need. So identify them first. Like I said, have a corporate sponsor, executive corporate sponsor that really empowers you to say, I need this information by now. You asked.
You should collaborate.
Nicely. And then to me, you know, we talk about diversity, but it's really cool because you need junior staff, senior staff, middle staff in order to get in that are enthused about you wanting to learn more about what sustainability is in your company. And in order to foster that mindset, you need to explain to them, we will start with our material issues and our materiality assessment. Please come on board. Don't just leave it to the expert. Get people involved that are good project managers, that are enthusiastic, that might have really good connections, are really good with social media, for instance, because you want to communicate this to the right audiences. So look at the different skill sets. So I couldn't tell you this is the perfect team.
But therefore
The information needs.
Yeah, you should have someone overseeing everything. Okay, the head of it, the architect.
Yes.
You should have someone really good in communications in order to entice people and have the good information to ensure the information flow and communication. You should have a data savvy person in order to make
100%.
to make a sense of lots of data sets that are totally different and to be able to put it all together for
a designer for creative. So this information should be represented maybe in other forms. So somebody that can really work PowerPoint, publisher.
I would say graphic designer altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
Designer and a bit of editing, clip editing skills. I mean, they can go together. So basically, have communication, have the geek, and have the person really knowing everything about CSRD, about the green tea, about all these things coming.
If you're a big organization, if you're a small organization, this group will be amazingly smaller. So, but you can't do it alone. I can tell you that now. All these 5 steps, unless it's your business and it's, you're by yourself, get a team together for sure.
By being by yourself, what you can do is really to aggregate a team.
Yes.
And to freelance a bit from then and then from, let's say, the graphic part, you can freelance it. Yeah, you can go freelancing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so
excellent.
Thank you so much. Let's see, any other questions? What have you seen more often? The ownership can never be there. Where have you seen more often?
Yes.
Okay, the ownership process.
Very quickly, Peter Bakker from the World Sustainable Development forget it. A guy that represents sustainable business organizations once said, accountants will save the world. It seems to be in many jurisdictions that accountants and finance professionals are really respected and everybody looks towards them because they hold the kitty, they hold the budget. We've actually seen that those who've been really successful implementing sustainability get their finance teams on board. Ideally the CFO, ideally the CEO, of course, but where should it sit? If you don't have a dedicated sustainability team, ask finance and accounting, because a lot of people will look to them. Oh, must be right. It comes from them. That's not a trick. That's just the way our imagination works. And I see that often where CFOs, chief financial officers, also become chief sustainability officers at the same time. So if I should choose anywhere, obviously the most competent people first, but that is a good place to start unless you have a sustainability team in place.
Fantastic.
So
thank you so much. So we're pretty much on time, I would say.
Yeah. And the last one, appropriate sample size of stakeholders. How long is a piece of string? It really depends on what business you're in, what market you're in. I couldn't just say 9, 5.
I would say yes.
It depends on who you critically rely on in order to keep your business running.
I would say like this, because it's a sample. If you go quantitative, quantitative methodology of research of some sort, you should tackle, let's say, something like a community, something like the employers, someone, a group that would give you at least 50 or at least 90 people responding. At least 90, actually. It depends a bit of the size, but 50 bare minimum, 90 a bit better, but more than that for the quantitative side. For the qualitative side, you should go with one-to-one. It's self-explanatory. For focus groups, I wouldn't go for more than 8. A bit more focus groups, and let's say even on the qualitative side, I wouldn't go for more than 30 persons altogether. I would say a medium business.
Okay.
For very large organizations, it's a bit differently. It is different from organization to the other, but nonetheless, for quantitative at least, you should really go high 2 digits, ideally 3 digits.
Cool.
Yeah.
So,
guys, this is it. Henning, this is it.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you thank you for all of you participating. We really appreciate it. Thanks for feedback. Hey, let's see what we can do in the future, and we want to hear more from you. You know, not only how did you find it, but share your experiences with us.
Your experience, I mean,
how did Materiality work for you? Did you use some of this? What worked? What didn't work? But also, maybe you did it completely differently and it worked. Share with us. You know, we want to get better.
Of course. So this event actually started from a couple of questions on our WhatsApp group, CSIL1 with Cambridge, and this is the end result. So it's up to us just to share the information and to become better into disseminating it, but also into practicing it. So we'll be sharing our contacts. We'll be sharing this presentation and the recording somehow. We'll see the best way to make it available for people to use it and to learn from it and to criticize it constructively, of course, and for to benefit all of us for a better and sustainable
well, there's no finish line.
Exactly.
So there you go. So have a great Tuesday, have a great week, a great month, and hopefully speak soon. Thanks again for your attention.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.